Hey guys, today I have Sean with me. Sean joined the program on June 9th, 2022. I think you'll see from his story here, and I think it'll be interesting for a lot of you because he faced what was called like a very one-sided journey to reconciliation, I guess. And I think you mentioned a lot of that too, where you felt a bit of maybe doubt in the beginning, where you were doubting maybe what's the point of doing this or why am I doing this in the first place? But I feel a lot of people are thinking and feeling the same things as well. So I think this will be very interesting for a lot of people. But I guess just to get straight to the chase, Sean, when you like before you joined the program, you were telling me about some of the sequence of events, I guess, that happened that led you to even find the program in the first place. What happened in the beginning?
I was just kind of like desperately looking for anything that could help, just Googling stuff. What actually got me onto the RR YouTube channel was I found some program that seemed really manipulative, and every time I looked for like a realistic review on it, all the websites had a link for a promo code for that program. And so I went to YouTube to try to find somebody giving a bad review of it because I didn't really believe it. And I think just through related words and things, I ended up finding a few of your videos and
Yeah.
I went
But
through those.
go back further before that, right? What was going on in your relationship? What was going on in your life at that point in time to warrant, like, say, to even seek help in the first place? Like, you were telling me, for
Ah,
example, your wife wanted a break when on May 15th, 2022, and she was going to go live with her brother. Start there. Start by
okay.
showing us, like, how are things like back then?
I mean, communication was really bad. We fought a lot. Really, like minor disagreements would kind of explode and turn into multi-day, week-long arguments where we barely talk to each other. Um, I would kind of run away from conflict if it was something that I didn't feel equipped for or didn't think we could get to a resolution for. I would kind of just stonewall or walk off, go like hang out by myself
Hmm.
until maybe things had settled down. But even at that point, we kind of just brushed everything under the rug instead of actually talking through what happened. It was just, all right, I guess enough time's passed and we're both not very like visibly angry right now, so we'll just pretend nothing happened.
And how long were you guys married or together at this point?
Um, Going on 9 years. We were married for 2, and we'd been together for 9.
9. And has this pattern always been like a thing from the very beginning, you would say?
I'd say so. I think very early on in the relationship, just kind of in the honeymoon phase, it was a lot easier to
Hmm.
let things go and forgive things, not get so offended by stuff. But I think over time, when you get really comfortable with somebody, they also get the ability to hurt you more, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the pattern here is kind of the same with a lot of other patterns where honeymoon phase starts, everything is good, but as life kind of throws you some challenges, you haven't created that safety or the ability to be able to communicate through those, to be able to resolve it, to be able to understand each other, express to each other in a healthy way what you really feel. So these problems come, both of you react badly in a way, and then it's almost like, okay, well, that was a mistake bringing this up, or that was a mistake talking about this. Let's just let time heal, pretend it never happened, basically sweep it under the rug and pretend like everything is okay again. But of course, like the next cycle happens where the next problem happens. Now, when you want to talk about that problem, the baggage from the other problem starts to come up again, and that
Yes.
triggers you more. And this
Mm-hmm.
compounds over time to where you both find yourself easily triggered. But you said something interesting here, which is like you knew things were going steadily downhill, but then you just thought that that's how relationships worked. How what was the thought process there going on in your mind of like why you thought like this downhill pattern wasn't really that bad?
I A lot of it I think was just kind of denial, just not really wanting to accept the fact that my relationship could be as bad as it was. I mean, we had a history of fighting for a long time, and we always kind of got through it, or we always
Mm.
acted like we got through it. And so I figured it would just keep on that way. I mean, the fights definitely got longer and worse. And as you talked about, with the more baggage kind of compounding from previous fights and never being resolved, they got a lot nastier, and things would escalate a lot quicker. But I guess it was just the only pattern I really knew.
Yeah. Like for
And
my
this is,
life, because like for my life, Sean, like the only patterns that I knew was the patterns of my parents, my friends' parents, and kind of their relationships and so on. And yeah, you kind of grow up in this society where you do expect relationships to go down after you get married. And the longer you're together, it just becomes more stale, it just becomes more baggage. It feels like you're talking about a car in a way, where it's like the longer you have your car, it's just wear and tear will basically destroy that relationship at the end of the day. Was that kind of like your thought process too?
yeah. And we both came from divorced families. I don't think we either of us had a great example of like a long term loving relationship, and so there's definitely some repetition of what we grew up with and were taught.
Mm. So of
And
course, like, go ahead. Sorry, I cut you off.
no, I mean, I was kind of just repeating what you said. Just
Mm.
I I think the car analogy is really good.
Yeah. So May 15th, 2022, that was when she said, I want to break. I'm going to live with my brother. How how did you take that news? Or what was going through your mind when that happened?
Um, I also started out with some denial. This was in my head. It was okay. It's just another fight. She will get over this. And I sat there and kind of tried to convince her out of it and say that we can stay. Like she should stay. We can work through this together. And that just continued to push her away.
Mm.
And I once it really set in that she was serious. I think it was a lot of panic and fear and just regret maybe for not doing something sooner, for not like recognizing the trend for what it was.
What made it real for you to say, oh, I think she's actually serious? And yeah.
It was the coldness. It was like, normally in an argument or something, emotions would kind of be running high. She would be angry, she would argue. It was none of that. It was just like her mind was made up. There was almost no emotion coming from her. And I think she was very guarded. But yeah, I don't know. It just like she almost seemed robotic to me at that point, because I think she was so set in this and not willing to let her emotions change, and kind of resisting her own emotions on the whole thing, and has just decided that this is what she needs to do.
Mm.
That just seeing that and trying to communicate with her just kind of being stone faced and saying, no, I'm leaving, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It was that one was new. That was a first for me.
I think I always say too, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have enough energy still, and if you still get angry with someone, then that means that you still care enough about that person or that relationship to feel angry about it. But once
Yeah.
you get stone cold, that's when you just don't care anymore. It's just I'm done. I'm checked out. And so I think that was what the scary part for you is she really doesn't care anymore.
Mm-hmm.
you know. And you mentioned you tried to say stuff to her to like convince her like, hey, you can stay here, we should stay here, etc. Uh, can you give us an example of like the stuff that you tried?
Yeah, I promised I would change. That was one of the first things. Um, she had requested that maybe we go to counseling probably 6 months prior,
Mm.
and my response was, I don't think we need it, which you see how that turned out. But yeah, I was like, let's go to counseling, let's do this, like let's work it out. Like I asked her, I said, please, like, don't leave. Let's figure this out. And I scrambled for a while. There was probably like a week and a half period before she actually got her stuff out, and
Mm.
I bought a piano, and apparently that doesn't just fix relationships.
What was your thought process for buying the piano?
It's something that she'd mentioned wanting to get into. It was close to our anniversary, and I was like, oh, just, I'm partially in denial. Like, I was kind of thinking, like, by the time our anniversary comes around, this will be resolved, and I'll show that I care and give her a piano.
Okay. I see. Um, so when it dawned on you that it was okay, she is being very serious right now, and I'm guessing she eventually moved out to live with her brother, right? She packed out her
Mhm.
stuff. You said within a week and a half. Um, what was communication like at that point in time between you two?
I had really put down, like, any aggression from me was gone. I'd like that clearly was a very big problem. And so I had stopped all of that and just tried to hear her out for, what I had done wrong. And I just kind of sat down and listened for the first time in a really long time in our relationship. I think that actually helped me pretty early.
So
Um,
basically, beforehand, you would be whenever she would tell you about how unhappy she was, her thought process and everything. I think you would do what a lot of men do, which is either try to convince your partner, wait, wait, you misunderstood everything, or no, 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 you don't understand where I was coming from, or basically just tell her like what you feel, what you think went down didn't really happen.
yeah.
It's like the essence of gaslighting, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the first time you actually listened, and when you listened, what did you find? Like, what was the essence of like? Did you find out, for example, the essence of why she was leaving, the degree of unhappiness she was having, etc.?
Yeah, there was a lot of that. And she talked about how she had been feeling this way for a really long time. She always kind of fought against that, against her better judgment, and just chosen to come back and try again.
Mm.
And nothing changed. We kept continuing that same pattern. Um, I mean, there was stuff that I disagreed with, but at that point, I had kind of just decided to shut my mouth and just hear her, let her just vent, get it all out, and tell me everything that was wrong.
Yeah.
I didn't have any solutions or responses. I took it all like to heart, and it was really hard to learn how much I had been hurting her and for this long, and not even being aware of it.
Yeah. I think that's like the crux of having an issue with safety, right? You mentioned, for example, well, I didn't agree with a lot of how she interpreted things or the reasons, I guess, of why she felt certain things. I feel like that's what a lot of men would say when they're on the brink of a divorce, because the essence of having no safety is that exactly that. There's no safety to actually express what you feel. And
Mm-hmm.
so, sure, if you had safety, then your partner would have felt a lot of the same things, but then she could have gone to you and said, hey, I'm feeling this right now. Am I correct in feeling this? And then you had a chance to then repair that or change the way she interpreted that for whatever she feels. But if you don't
Yeah.
have safety, then she's not expressing it. And if she's not expressing it, she's just taking whatever assumption she's making. It doesn't matter if it's false or correct, but she's running with it because there's
Mm-hmm.
nowhere else to go besides that. And so a lot of men who are listening to their partner talk about their problems like this, they're always going to be spending a lot of time in just trying to correct what they're hearing. But what they don't
Yeah.
understand is the problem doesn't change. The problem is that you haven't created safety. And the very fact that you're trying to gaslight her right now to say whatever you're feeling is not true, is not correct, is the exact reason why she didn't feel safe in the first place. So,
Mm-hmm.
the funny thing is like a lot of men who try to use logic to convince their partner to change their feelings, by doing that, they're going to be destroying the safety that actually led to how they developed those feelings in the first place. And they don't understand that they're actually worsening the problem unknowingly.
Yeah.
Um, So was there how was the resistance at that point in time to even talking about the relationship, to the idea of reconciling, to the idea of like working on the relationship?
I mean, it was a hard no for working on it or reconciling. It was to some extent, she was kind of protecting me with a lot of what she was saying. And instead of like, instead of saying, I'm completely done, I'm like, I want a divorce, it was like, maybe things will work out. But in her head, it was, they're not going to, and I'm leaving. This was just to like ease my suffering at the time, I think.
I think it's more like don't get your hopes up because you're gonna be disappointed because
Yeah.
we're not getting back together. So June 9th, this is about a month after this whole bomb gets dropped in front of your
Mm-hmm.
face. You joined the program, and you mentioned before joining this program, you actually looked at another program that had a bunch of like paywalls and promo codes, stuff like that. Uh, I guess tell me first, what made you decide to join this program of all the ones that you found on the market, I guess?
One of them was your YouTube videos, just giving information that clicked and made sense and was applicable to my situation,
Hmm.
and it was just there. It was available for free. I could just go and watch a YouTube video about the lack of safety and like how that destroys relationships, whereas all this other stuff was, if you buy this, we'll tell you how to fix it. um
Yeah. Yeah. But I
and
mean,
so
at the same time, like I still get a lot of comments from people who like complain about like, oh, but you're not telling me all the exact ways of how to create safety. But I'm like, our program is like close to 100 hours. I cannot do this through a YouTube video. There's no way anybody would listen
yeah.
to this. And we also talk about this later. A lot of it is not just conceptual understanding of the principles, but also becoming a performer at it, like actually being able to do it. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
very vast distance between conceptual knowing and experiential knowing. And so even if I were to say, here's the whole content for you, and you conceptually understand it, if you're not in a position where there's a coach to like take you from conceptual knowing to experiential knowing, you're not going to do very well. And this is why a lot of people ask, for example, can I just like buy the videos and not buy the coaching? Well, I could get a lot more money that way, but I don't want to do that because it doesn't actually help anyone. And we tried that before. It's just a nightmare because they were using it in all the wrong applications, the wrong intentions, the wrong ways, etc. So June 9th, you joined, and tell us how things are like now, I guess.
I they're great. Our communication's really good. We're very loving with each other. I get lots of words of affirmation from her and thank yous for fighting so hard and changing so much and becoming such a good person. So I'm not trying to toot my own horn here.
It feels weird, I know.
um, but it's good. Like there's still conflicts here and there, but it's nothing compared to what it used to be. I feel very capable of handling them and talking through, understanding her. Um, yeah, like we spend almost all of our time together. Before all of this happened, I was spending the majority of my time by myself in the basement. But like it's good. We really enjoy each other's company. Yeah, we're
Yeah,
working on the house again, planning a trip to Europe this summer.
good.
Um, yeah.
What was that? What was that moment or that period when she decided to move back? How did that come about, and how did that transpire?
I had bought her tickets to a band she really liked in a different state and convinced her to go with me. Basically, I figured she likes them, she might go with me. This was November.
Mm.
And so we were spending some time together talking a fair amount, but she was still very unsure. And so I figured I'd buy this stuff, get the plane tickets, and if she didn't want to go with me, I'd go by myself or bring a friend. And so I kind of just laid that out and was like, if you want to go, like, you are invited.
Just invite, like literally an invite, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it was the last date there. We had a really good time. We actually met her favorite band. They like signed an album for her. I somehow managed to like create this really wonderful experience for her. And I'd spent the last 3-4 months just talking to her about everything that had been a potential problem, being supportive of her, what she was going through. Like she had ended up getting her an apartment. She was kind of exploring other relationships, and I was just kind of being supportive through all of that and showing her that I would be there regardless of what happened.
Yeah.
And near the end of that, when we were getting ready to leave, she was just told me that she said, "I think I'm going to come back. I don't think it'll be soon. I think I still have a lot of things to work through, and it'll take time, and I want to tie up some loose ends, but I think I'm going to come back."
Yeah. Um, what'd you feel at that moment? I mean, I remember the post you made about that one, and I remember like, whoa, that's cool.
It
uh,
was
what was that like for you?
it was a lot of emotions. Like there was definitely excitement. It's the thing that I've been working toward. I think there was a little bit of fear there that, maybe I wanted to make sure I was ready and prepared, and that this didn't happen prematurely, so that, like, I don't know, I didn't want to slip up. I wanted to make
Yeah.
sure it still happened the right way. There was some accomplishment, and maybe some confusion because it wasn't what I thought it would be. When, like, really early on, right after she first left, I remembered, like, kind of visualizing her telling me she's going to come back, and just in my state of desperation, and it wasn't that. And so I think there was a little bit of confusion for, like, why is this not like the greatest thing I've ever heard right now? And the confusion for why am I feeling fear.
Yeah.
I don't
And
know,
I
it was a
think,
lot.
yeah. And I think you've seen a lot of people in the program too going through like fake reconciliation too,
Mm-hmm.
where their partner says like I want to come back, but then they use that opportunity to just like stop everything they were doing, pretty much go back to their old self, stop working on the program, etc. They got complacent basically. And suddenly like 3 months later, they're like, I'm out. The partner's like, I'm out. And this time is even harder to get. So it's almost like I think a feeling of one, I don't want that to happen to me. I don't know
Yeah.
if this is real or not. And number two, it's also the feeling of like, this is not when it ends, this is when it starts. This is when the real work starts. And so it's almost like, you get called to play for the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you get happy for a bit, but then you're like, oh shit, now the pressure's on though. I'm gonna be a rookie. I'm gonna play my first game. People are gonna be watching, and I need to perform. Was that kind of like what was going through your mind too?
Yeah.
Yeah, that went through my mind in the beginning. Um, Now the other question too is, how did you go from your partner saying basically, I don't really want to talk about the relationship. I don't want to talk about the prospect of even becoming a couple anymore, looking at your changes, etc. How did you then how were you able to start the conversations in the first place? How were you able to like broach the conversations for her to even understand your changes and what you're learning, what your growth are, etc.?
Um, there wasn't an incredible amount of resistance for the things that she had issues with. And I think because I had spent so long kind of shutting that down,
Mm.
that when I gave her an avenue to just talk about these things, it was such a change and maybe healing to, like, finally be able to get everything out that I'd been shutting down, ignoring, or walking away from. Um, Starting the conversations, I would kind of like, she would periodically come over to see the dogs, or pick a dog up for the weekend. And I would just have something I'd been thinking about for the last a week or so since I had seen her, and I would just kind of open a conversation about it, being like, I want to talk about this thing I did that like really sucked, and how how dumb I was to not realize what I was doing at the time, and then I don't know, essentially argue with her when she tried to tell me it was a problem.
Yeah. So I think in the program, because I get this question a lot, right? It's like, how do I start a conversation with my partner if she doesn't want to talk about the relationship? She doesn't want to talk to me. She doesn't want to talk about us, doesn't want to talk about reconciling, etc. And there's a lot of things I would say to that. But the number one thing I would say is the fact that people are asking that question, like, how do I start the conversations, is the reason why their partner cannot have conversations with them in the first place. Because again, it's almost like if your partner can sense and smell that whatever conversations you are going to have together, it's about you trying to manipulate, you trying to change her mind, you trying to get back together, of course she doesn't want to have the conversation, right? Which is why we say in the program too, never talk about the relationship, right? Never make anything about the relationship, but make everything about just the principle of and what it means to grow as humans. Talk about human experiences, talk about human realizations, talk about human things. And you plant seeds through those conversations. So it's almost like you're trying to position the seeds in a proper way to where it's easy for someone that is resistant to be able to take it. And I think that was what you did really well. And I think what a lot of people haven't seen in this interview is just the amount of work you did to actually practice and master the frameworks, for example, the TTH script. I mean, I was scrolling through your post history and there were so many freaking videos that you posted every single, almost like sometimes like daily, to where you're posting your executions daily. And so even though you didn't get intense resistance, the reason behind that is that I think your partner and anyone at that point can tell how untethered you are, that you are doing something not to have, right? With like an ulterior motive in mind. You were sharing with her those stuff. You were listening to her for the sake of just listening to her. This is just what you do, right? And I think people can sense that genuineness there, which is why her guard instantly goes down. And then you're also like a really good performer in terms of like how to listen, how to like dance in a conversation because you practice so much. And I think again, it's natural that you're gonna plant some seeds of like, okay, this guy is operating very, very differently than how it's been operating for a very long time. And so that makes it easier for your partner to like latch on to that too. So don't discount and don't like, make light of the work you've done too. Like you did a crap ton of work. Like, I don't know, do you remember that?
Yeah,
Like,
it was, I lived and breathed it every waking hour outside of work.
yeah, I was proud of you. You were great. Um, so I guess, was there a part of you throughout this whole journey where you felt, I guess, let me phrase the question this way. When you joined the program, we told you this is going to be a lot of hard work, a lot of very intense work, a lot of very uncomfortable work for many months, for a long time. A lot of guys hearing that would be like, I don't need to do that, right? They would just say, for example, I would just find a new relationship. Why do I need to put myself through this uncomfortable period? I can just find someone new. Doesn't matter. Like I find someone who can appreciate me, whatever it is. Did you think that ever?
No, but I did. For me, I was surprised at how long it took. Like there was, I had very few thoughts of like, I am gonna find someone else. This isn't worth my time. It was, it was always, this is what I'm working toward, and I'm gonna put all my effort into it. The speed at which things moved, I think, that was one of the things I had to battle, which was like, I feel like a lot of people going into it, I definitely did. I went into it with the idea that like, okay, so I do these things, relationship is fixed, we're back together. And maybe in like a really like long scale of things, that is what happened. But I think I went in expecting to have everything fixed in a month. And then, 6 months go by and it's like, okay, well, we're communicating pretty well. But then it was probably another 4 months before she finally moved back in. And then another month after that before she completely got rid of her apartment and actually took everything out of her apartment and brought it back home. I think, and that was a little surprising. Like, I mean, it makes sense. It takes a really long time to rebuild a relationship or build a relationship with someone new. It's not just something that happens overnight or in just a couple months. Like
But
it's a lot of
what made you keep going? Like, it's like this is like 10 months of solid work before you got to see any even a whiff of reconciliation, right? 10 months is a long time. What was the thought that kept you going of why you wanted to go through this?
I'd say the addiction to the process did a lot. That one, it some points it was just like, oh, I'm just doing this because this is what I do now. It's not whether or not this works. And I think even though progress was really slow, I still saw progress in small areas. Even, if it wasn't like, it was nothing drastic or huge at any point in time. But, like I remember the first time I stopped off at her house to see her, like drop something off for her, and she smiled when she saw me. That was the first time in 4 or 5 months since I'd seen that smile from her. And that was something that was like, okay, I think I'm doing something right. Like, I'm going to just keep doing what I'm doing because it seems to be pushing the needle in the direction I want it to go.
Yeah. Did you ever at any point feel like you were doing the heavy load of the work of the betterment of trying to work on the relationship, trying to reconcile?
Sure. I feel like everybody feels that. That is to an extent what it is. When somebody wants out of the relationship and doesn't want to work on it anymore, if you want to try to change that, you're going to have to, do all the heavy lifting, do all of the work. She tried to do all the work for the previous
for a long time,
for many years, and I did nothing.
Yeah. I'm gonna go on a spiel a bit because I've been thinking about this one-sided relationship thing for a bit, and because like I get this question a lot. It's like, well, what do I do if I feel like it's one-sided? And I think it's important to understand like how things got one-sided in the first place, right? So again, I think it's problems happen, step one, and people play victim. People, let's say they get so tethered, they play victim, they blame people's character, they make the wrong interpretations of whatever problem is happening, and they do and say things to destroy that safety, like you guys did, right? It's the same thing. And this causes like a resentment to form in both people. The resentment prevents you from fixing that one problem, but you not being able to fix that one problem creates more resentment. But then another problem comes and the same cycle happens. And so what's funny to me is people, when men come to me and say, I feel a bit one-sided. I feel like, why am I the one who is trying to save this on my own? Why isn't she doing it? I can guarantee you that their partner will also feel like it's one-sided. Right? Now, mathematically speaking, I'm an Asian, so like I'll do math. Mathematically speaking, it is mathematically impossible for both people to think it's one-sided. It's just not, that's not how it's defined, right? If it's one-sided, literally one person's doing the work and the other person's not. So if both persons think the other person's not doing the work and they are, how can a one-sidedness exist there, right? And so the one-sidedness really is, I think, a factor of all that resentment building for a very long time. And that resentment makes it very exhausting for you to even think about wanting to do something about anything anymore, right? And you feel that one-sidedness. And the one-sidedness also forms from the fact that you've been trying to fix things from the same victim mindset, from the same approach, basically, that you used to create the problem in the first place. So yeah, if you are exerting all this effort in the wrong ways, and this effort is not going in the direction that you want, you're going to feel very one-sided too, like, obviously, right? So the thing is, if you feel like you're in a one-sided relationship, understand that the only way out of that is by first like changing the paradigms, the internal mindsets that you have about your current situation right now. So for example, like a lot of people whose partners are not wanting to do with the relationship, for example, they'll say like, I feel like I'm in a one-sided relationship. Well, one mindset that is really killing you at that point in time is the fact that you are adopting what we call the victim or follower mindset, not the leader mindset. Because imagine like you go work in a company and your boss says, well, my employees are not starting this project. Why should I? Like, that's a shitty leader. But yet people say that all the time in relationships. Well, she's doing that. Why should I do that? She's not starting. Why should I start? Right? That is the most childish, the most like beta, the most unleader-like mentality. Did you feel that? Did you like
it wasn't something that like I let just fester, like, but I mean those thoughts definitely popped up quite a bit. It was like, okay, well, why am I doing all of this if she isn't willing to reciprocate? But
yeah.
And I think the reframe I had for it was, she did all of this work for this long, and I'm throwing some internal tantrum over working at this for just a couple months. Like it's and I mean that was like some of the lower moments, I suppose, like flywheel starting to form and all of that. But it wasn't a place that I let myself just operate from. There was auto suggestions that I had to combat those thoughts and make it, view it as rebuilding a relationship the way it should have been done the first time, something that will actually last and won't just slowly degrade because I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah, it makes sense because the two auto suggestions that really worked for me back then was one, like you said, it was like, if you really were honest with yourself, you will see that your partner has tried to fix their relationship for a long time. You were just so freaking blind in your victim mindset, in your own like stories, in your own narratives of like your follower mindset, whatever, that you never saw it. Right. It's like that story of like that grasshopper who is stuck in this river, and then all these like other creatures are trying to rescue him and like, hey, jump onto my boat. And he's like, no, God will save me. Right. And then another one says like, hey, jump on my boat. And no, God will save me. And then he drowns, not realizing that like that was the help. That was the help, like all along. And the other thing that really resonated with me at that point in time was also how this notion of like reversing the feedback loops in a way, of if I looked at how things got the way they are today in my relationship at that point in time, I realized that what I did had very big impacts on what my partner did. So for example, if she were to say something to me and I responded by being angry, that would make her even more angry. But if I responded by being not angry and actually creating safety at that point in time, she won't be angry at that point in time. So what I did is already affecting what she does. And that applies to one moment. Imagine how much it applies to like over the course of many years. And so if I had the power, I guess, to change her behavior in a negative way, why not have the power to change her behavior in a positive way by changing the culture, environment, etc.? And that just really empowered me to go like, what am I waiting for? Right? Leaders don't just mope about and wait. They just take charge and say, I don't care what the pattern is right now. I'm going to create my own patterns, kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you kind of have that same AS too, or along the same lines?
Yeah, it was. It's been a minute. Let me see if I can.
This is so long ago, like elementary school.
Well, it was just. I mean, that was a really early one I tackled. Yeah, I mean, it was along the lines of, you're learning the tools right now to fix this, to reverse this, and not continue to like make things worse. Like what you're doing right now is how you create better relationships with everyone,
Mm,
and viewing it as hard work and a problem is part of what caused the problems in the first place.
yeah, yeah. So remember that, guys. Like when you feel like you're in a one-sided relationship, you're gonna have all these narratives in your mind to that will allow you to justify why you feeling like you're in a one-sided relationship is justified, is warranted. You're right for feeling that. But ask yourself, like, are these thoughts bred from the same exact thinking that caused the problems in the first place? Are they, for example, thoughts of you playing victim, playing the follower mindset, playing the blame game, making too many assumptions about your partner, making, just all these mindsets that actually got you in the problem in the first place? And usually the answers you will find, like, yeah, it does kind of do that. And we're making a YouTube video on this right now. So if you Google like my name and then one-sided, you would find the video that I'm talking about. And we can go into much deeper detail on that particular topic. The other thing you mentioned that was really interesting, that was like key to your success, was also seeing resistance and tough truth as like a positive thing, seeing problems and entropy as a positive thing. Because in the beginning of your reconciliation process, you probably got a lot of resistance, maybe not in the form of like anger or whatever it is, but resistance towards maybe like doubt, suspicions of your changes, maybe doubt and suspicions of your intentions, maybe whenever you try to bring up conversations. Um, Tell me what kind of resistance you got in the beginning there.
Definitely lots of doubt, a lot of I don't think we were meant for each other. Like we should have just been friends. Like it was what was the word she used? Situationship was one that I heard a lot, and it was just that we were only together out of convenience, and that she should have made this decision a long time ago. Um, yeah, I think the biggest thing I spent a lot of time just finding ways to believe and understand that her just talking to me about how she felt with anything was a positive. I don't know. It was really crazy to just like see that shift in myself for when she would come and like tell me things that, I knew 3 months ago would have destroyed me. And I was excited that she was talking to me. I was
Yeah.
happy to just have her actually being genuine.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you say that because this is such a mind-bending concept for people, I think, to understand, right? It's so the premise that people need to understand is like when you're trying to reconcile and you're trying to change yourself, your changes might actually create more resistance in the short term, more tough truths in the short term. It's not like a linear process, it actually goes down a bit. And the image I have is almost like, imagine your lack of safety it's like a dam that's been blocking the water, the gunk on the other side of the wall. And you've been like building a taller and taller and stronger dam because you're like, I don't want to know about that stuff. Right. But as that builds, that's what causes that your partner to feel like, I'm done with this already. Like this is stinky and festering. Like I'm done with this. When you create safety for the first time, it's like you pulling like a brick out of that dam. Suddenly, right? You're gonna find all these things that you don't like, that you don't want to hear, that is really unsettling for you here. And when you hear these things that are unsettling, a lot of men who haven't changed their mindset will look at that and go, again, they'll try to correct their partner, they'll try to like fix it, they'll try to like say, oh, it's all misunderstanding, like this water is not that bad, whatever it is, right? But by you doing that, you are actually saying, like, I am the same person that who cannot handle this gunk,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't want to know about this gunk. And so you're basically saying the reason why I built the dam in the first place is to prevent myself from getting dirty from this gunk, right? And so when you finally get dirty from this gunk and you say like, "Oh, I don't want to get dirty," you feel uncomfortable, you feel like you're losing yourself, you feel angry at your partner, you feel like upset, then you're like, "Well, yeah, well, you're not ready for the gunk then. So put that brick back in and just leave us be. Like, don't even try anymore." You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so one of the biggest things that our clients have to learn in the beginning of the program is to really reinterpret these tough truths, these difficult moments as a bad thing. Because again, you have to understand here, okay, your partner's telling you that maybe she have never loved you. She's never cared for you. There's no chance of reconciliation. There's no way she will change her mind. That she hates your guts. She found another guy, whatever it is. And let's say you feel angry at it, you feel upset. How dare you find another guy? How dare you think this? How dare you feel this? By you saying that, is that going to change the fact that your partner feels unhappy? The fact that she already found another guy? No, it doesn't change anything, right? The only thing it changes is now she knows you can't deal with your shit. And so next time she will still feel those things, but she just won't tell you about it, which is the problem in the first place.
Yeah.
What other auto suggestions did you have for you to really embrace that resistances, the tough truths that you were getting at that point in time? Like, what were you telling yourself besides the fact that like she's feeling these things already?
I mean, that like you kind of touched on that last little bit was that she's telling me that, it's like, and now that I know there is something I can do about it, I can hear this and I can work with it. If she comes and tells me like she like hated all of this stuff I did for, you know, all this time and didn't even feel comfortable enough to actually tell me that she was upset about it, then obviously I could never do anything to address that.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the most thing that clicked the most for me with the tough truths and resistance was it's a good thing that she's telling me because it already existed, and now that I know, I can do something.
Yeah. An example I have, and I've used this example many times before, is like I was driving a car one day and then I told a joke, right? And then my partner got offended by my joke.
Mm-hmm.
And this was like a year ago. So this is, we have a lot of safety at this point. Now, a lot of men at that point, when their partner get offended, they would say, dude, get over it. Like, don't be so serious. What are you doing? Don't be like, it's just a joke. Take a joke. Jesus, relax. But for me, it's like, no, no, no. She's telling me something here, right? She's telling me this negative confirmation bias she might have. She's been harboring that led her to misinterpret my joke in that way. Because if she didn't have this negative confirmation bias, she would never have misunderstood my joke. She would be just like, oh, yeah, it's funny. So to me, I was like, I could have asked her for every single day for 10 years. Is there anything that you don't like that you've been harboring? She wouldn't even know that exists. But the fact that she resisted right there tells me that exists, right? And my job there is to lean in. And I asked her at that point in time, like, oh, I realized that was a bit offensive to you. Let me try to understand why that was offensive. And we had a conversation about like why that was offensive. And she pointed out to me like, yeah, you used to have this pattern of behavior where you did this, where you said this about people, where I was a bit scared of the relationship because of this, whatever it is. More revealing more stuff. And then it became a really positive conversation about like, now that I know all these problems, here's what I'm going to do about it, right? Here's what I'm going to do to work on myself to make sure that doesn't happen again, to make sure like the things I say don't come across as that way anymore. And it became an opportunity to where like it started off as a negative event where my partner is feeling negative, and it ended up with a very positive outcome to where she felt even more safe. She felt she expressed what she wanted to express. She felt like when she expressed something, good things happen. And now that negative confirmation bias isn't there anymore, right?
Yeah.
With just changing the way we see the tough truths, it changes everything. And when you are in a beginning of like reconciling, you're going to face a lot of tough truths like that. And your old mind, the normal mind, I would say, the average person's mind will be looking at those tough truths, and you're going to feel a bit of resistance to it. Mm-hmm. But the people in this program, like you could like, give me more of that. Give me more of that. Let me turn it from negative to positive. Let me take your lemons that you're giving me. Let me make more lemonades, like, right, like even better. And that's crucial to like changing that one-sided relationship feeling as well. Because once you realize that like you can take anything that your partner gives and turn it into a positive that actually builds safety, that actually like kind of shocks your partner with the way you respond a bit, and you feel this outcome happening to you, and you're like, whoa, this is really powerful. I'm changing my relationship by the day. That's when you realize, the things I'm doing, they're not moot. They're not for naught anymore. They're actually for something. I can see the progress. And that's when you realize, it doesn't really feel that one-sided anymore. It could be, it's not, it doesn't really matter to me. It's irrelevant anymore. I have the power now to control this, right? Mm-hmm. What about this whole notion of like, you mentioned a big part of your success too was also being super consistent with the program, and that's something you did very well. Was like you were so consistent with everything in the program. What made you? What were the kinds of thinking that you did on your own to be able to make this program into your lifestyle, for you to become a performer at it, for you to basically do the program without feeling like you're doing work?
The untethering was like a huge part. I remember that first, module 6 in phase 1, where you talk about like killing the disguises. That was like the first actionable thing I got outside of just, filling out the mental map on the way there and reviewing it. And I saw that, and I remember just kind of like scrambling, like, okay, this is something I can do. I think I can finally stop like feeling this hopelessness and despair, I think the fact that it was such a terrifying life experience for me that I wanted so badly to change, and it occupied 100% of my like thoughts, that just channeling all of that into your program, where slowly I became less stressed and less anxious, and found all of these daily things I can do that really relieved that and helped me just feel confident and happy and peaceful. That one really pushed me to just keep doing it and keep going. Just like me feeling better, having a better relationship with myself, how I thought about myself, the things that I did on a daily basis, just kind of seeing that progress in myself. And it really sold me on it, just kept me going.
Yeah. You mentioned at one point, you said you had you didn't really have doubts about the program until I said, this is not going to guarantee an outcome, a reconciliation. This is not going to guarantee the outcome that you want per se. Why do you think that what I said there planted some seeds of doubt in your mind?
One of the things I caught in myself was a desire or need to control situations. And so, I mean, I'm sure like stuff talked about that in videos, things earlier on, but I think my confirmation bias at that point just ignored all of that. It was like, this will get me what I want. I will control the situation, make it what I want it to be.
Yeah.
And so I kind of went in with that mindset. And so when I saw things that were kind of counter to that, I think it made me like take a step back and have to like reevaluate things and think about my motives. And
now I think looking back, you can see how silly that was, because like we learned this whole notion of reconciliation is a very falling outcome, right? In your life, there's always two kinds of outcomes: there's striving and falling. Striving is when like you're lifting weights, for example. The more willpower you exert to it, the more thought, the more deliberateness you exert to getting that outcome, the more you get it, right? The more you push yourself, the more you lift, more weight you lift. But there's other things in life like that are falling, like falling asleep, falling in love. That's why they call it falling for a reason, because it's a falling thing. The more you try to sleep, the more you like say like I'm gonna be in control of my sleep, right? The less you can sleep actually. And you fall asleep when you just follow the process, untether from the outcome, follow the process, get addicted to the process, enjoy the process of falling asleep for the sake of falling asleep, and you just fall asleep. And the evidence of this is that you never remember when the exact moment when you fall asleep. You will never remember it, because like the moment you fall asleep is when you forget about trying to fall asleep. And so sort of the same thing with relationships. Like if you come into the program to a relationship trying to reconcile, and you are hell-bent on trying to reconcile, ironically, you will never reconcile. So when we said earlier, like, hey, you felt in control of changing the feedback loops, etc., that is not like the control that we often associate control with. It's not like a striving control. It's more like I'm in control of the inputs, the processes. And if I'm in control of that, the outcome will eventually arrive. Like it's just, I'll fall into it.
I mean, you're in control of yourself and what you put out, regardless of what somebody gives you.
Yeah. And this goes back to like that notion of genuineness, right? Why your partner was even open to conversing with you, to talking about your changes, the program even at some point, was because like she can sense the untetheredness. She can sense the genuineness, because she can sense like you're not doing this to get a certain outcome. It's easy for me to fall into the trust of like trusting a conversation with you, because I don't feel forced into it. I don't feel like there's some ulterior motive that there's no strings attached, basically, right? And the other thing about untethering too, I think, is the hard part for people to understand also is like a lot of people, when they think about untethering, they think about just not caring. But really it's about like getting addicted to the process. So it's shifting your addiction away from the outcomes to the process, right? But a lot of people, I think, they shift their tetheredness away from the current outcome to another outcome, what we call chimpanzeeing, right? So for example, people would say, for example, like, well, I'm untethering from this relationship because I'm just going to say I don't really care about this relationship that much. I'm going to better myself so that I can get a better relationship later on. Right there, you're still like chimpanzeeing into another outcome. You're just like swinging from branch to branch. Did you get this when you were doing the program, or did you find that untethering, like doing the state of like doing because you are, with no expectation of an outcome, came naturally to you?
I'm not sure it was like completely naturally. Like I don't think I chimpanzeed really. I kind of promised myself really early on that I would put all of my effort into, this program, making this relationship work, or seeing, what this program does wherever, and seeing where my relationship goes, I guess. I wasn't, I didn't date or really think that I needed to find somebody else that would appreciate me or what I was doing. I think a lot of my early just thought processes really gave me a lot of appreciation for everything that she had done. And so, I told myself that I owe it to her to put all of this effort in, even if it doesn't mean a reconciliation, just to like, at the very least, ease that transition for her.
Yeah. That's such a rare thing for a guy to say, right? Just like your partner is like at that point leaving you and saying, I don't want to be part of this anymore. A lot of guys would play victim at that point and say, you know what, like, how dare she? And start blaming it on your partner. But then here you are saying like, I see what she's done. I see the value that she's created. I think I was the one who kind of fucked up a bit here. And I think, again, that question of like, what made you keep going? And I think is that it's I think that realization that like I don't think I don't think I'm faultless here. I think I have a lot of the fault in this thing. And yeah, the humbling realization, I guess. Um, let's talk about your insomnia for a bit because you mentioned actually before we go there, I want to close off that topic on being a performer real quick, right? It's we talk about this notion of being in a one-sided relationship. And I think again, the other thing that causes this feeling of being in a one-sided relationship is when doing the right things feel like work, feel effortful, feel difficult. But once you become a performer at it, when you learn to do not to have, but to do because you are, you enjoy that thing that you do intrinsically, that's when you get out of that feeling of like being in a one-sided relationship too, because you're like, doesn't really matter how long this takes, doesn't really matter because reconcile or not, have or not, outcome, whatever outcomes I get, I'm still gonna brush my teeth every night. Like this is what I do. This is part of what I do. And I think that was a massive part of your success too, is when you became a performer to just do because you are, and you can do the right things without even thinking sometimes. That's when you become so consistent. That's when doing the right things becomes so effortless. You don't even think about it sometimes. That success comes naturally. And I want to talk about your insomnia a bit because I feel like a lot of the reasons why you were successful in your relationship in reconciling is also the same principles that got you to cure your insomnia. And I know how difficult it is to cure insomnia because I have it. I had it for a very long time. And the problem again is that when people are trying to fight insomnia, they're trying to use a striving approach to try to fix it, right? So, for example, like they would strive to be in bed by a certain time. They would strive to turn off the lights. They would strive to just close their eyes at a certain time and go to sleep. But all these things doesn't really work because you're still striving to fall. Doesn't really make sense. What worked for you think?
I mean, it was like the not focusing so hard on just being asleep instead of, spending 4 hours laying in bed being like, why am I not asleep right now? I found certain things that just helped me relax and focused on that. The yeah, SOC, like the body scans, those were huge for me. Just like really putting all of my awareness into like, my body, how it felt, the sheets against my legs, my gravity on me against the bed, just getting out of my head, putting my awareness on like, I don't know, just my body in general and not putting so much focus on being asleep right now. And I don't know, it's crazy. It's like, it had been, I mean, it started when I dealt with some things I didn't like. And I guess I never really processed them. I think age 16, and that's when it started. And it was just a very consistent thing in my life until this last year. And it was, using SOC to really like understand myself, my own thoughts, my own feelings, why certain things triggered me or upset me. And then, letting go of that or understanding it, understanding that it like it doesn't define who I am for the rest of my life. Like people make mistakes and you learn from them. And I think that in combination with just the ability to kind of step back out of my own thoughts, like it fixed it.
I think that is really big for me too. I was before you said SOC, I was gonna say also like SOC was the most massive thing that cured my insomnia too. It's because like, the other word for SOC, so SOC for people who don't know is like state of consciousness. Is a term we use in the program to describe what you can also refer to it as like mindfulness, surrendering to the present moment, surrendering to whatever is happening, surrendering to what is right now, just accepting what is, right? So feeling whatever feelings you're having and just accepting that it's there. And the problem is like when people feel something they don't like or think something they don't like, see something they don't like, or they, for example, they realize like, I'm not falling asleep right now. what they would do is they would try to fight it. They would try to say in their head, for example, like, I should be falling asleep right now. Oh my God, I'm such a bad person for not falling asleep right now. I feel, and they start to panic about not falling asleep. Because again, it's like the purple giraffe paradox, right? It's like, if I tell you, don't think of a purple giraffe, don't think about it. The first thing you do is you're going to think about it. And there's like this dichotomy that we said, this chasm between conscious and subconscious, where we said, like, if you tell yourself, I need to fall asleep, your subconscious will basically say, I am not asleep. Right? That purple giraffe paradox occurs, and that chasm creates a lot of anxiety. So the more you try to use a striving approach to make a falling thing happen, the worse it'll get. And sleep happens when you finally accept it and you go, I'm not falling asleep right now, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. This is how not falling asleep feels like. This is how the anxiety of not falling asleep feels like. And once you are able to like accept it fully like that, then you fall asleep, right? It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Because you remove that chasm. And we talk about this chasm a lot in the program. But it's the same thing with like reconciliation, right? The more you try to get reconciliation to happen, the harder you will make it for your partner to actually fall, to trust, to fall in love, to surrender to your changes, to surrender to whatever it is that is happening right now, right? And that's why, like, going back to what I said, the reason why I say this is not going to guarantee an outcome. This is not going to, the outcome you get may not be the outcome you want. The reason why I say that is I'm trying to say that to get you to untether more. To say, like, what is your intention? Is your intention to join this program to reconcile? Because if it is, you will never reconcile. If your intention here is, I will do this, I will learn to do this, despite the fact that I can reconcile or not, I don't care. Ironically, when you get there, then you will reconcile. The same thing. If you try to fall asleep with the intention of falling asleep, you will never fall asleep. But if you try to fall asleep with the intention of not falling asleep, you ironically will fall asleep.
That is one of the craziest ones. Like how when you spend a bunch of time trying to stay awake, like you're just out.
It's true though. You don't have insomnia when it's a weekend and you're just out with your buddies till late and then you just fall asleep. Now, last thing I want to talk about is really this concept of like anti-fragility. And that's actually part of my wedding vows is anti-fragility. It's, there's 3 levels of strength, I guess, in life. And you can also see this in relationships too. The lowest level of strength is fragility, of course. The more pressure you put, the more it crumbles, right? Mm-hmm. Then you have robust, is the second stage, where the more pressure you put, you can hold on. It's like trying to hold on to it, right? But then eventually it'll break.
Yeah.
Right? Then you have anti-fragility, which is the more pressure you add, the more it just rises somehow. A good example of robust, fragile is like a vase, right? Very fragile. A good example of like something that's robust in life is like a diamond, right? A diamond looks strong, but actually very brittle, right? Engagement ring cracks all the time. Like it's very brittle. But there's not really a good word to say to describe this other than anti-fragility, because like when I asked you, for example, what is the opposite of fragility? What do you think?
I don't know, not fragile. It's not a great
so yeah, exactly.
Word,
so like, so the opposite of fragility is like, oh, it's strong, it's robust, it's hefty, it's unbreakable, right? Mm-hmm. But this is anti-fragility is more than unbreakable because it's self-healing in a way, right? Our human body is like that. But when you get sick, it gets stronger. It doesn't just become the same, right? Mm-hmm. And I think when you were looking back at your relationship back then, it was robust at best, probably more towards the fragile side. But a lot of people in this life, their relationships are robust at best, right?
Yeah.
Challenges keep coming in. They're holding themselves together, holding it together, right? But again, it's like a car, right? You are forever fighting entropy, and it starts here. You can never go above this. It just goes downhill from there. It's just wear and tear, or it's just how much you can take throughout the whole relationship. And I think that's really sad. And I think now that you are able to create safety, now that you're able to like operate in this way where you can be a bit more anti-fragile in a way, where like problems are still happening, but these problems are not making you weaker. Every problem that comes makes you stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger, right? How does that feel to be in a relationship like that?
It is great. Like it is really, I don't know, empowering, to see how good my relationship could be. And I did not expect that this would be where I would get going into this program. I went into this program thinking, okay, I will fix this. And then that turned into, okay, I'll fix myself. And that turned into like, I can continue to build our relationship through anything. Mm-hmm. I mean, our relationship is stronger than it has ever been. And I think I think very few people can say that after, 1 year ago, their wife moved out and said they don't want to be with them anymore.
I love that image. You gave me a really interesting image, which is like, I think when you came in to this program, it's almost like, again, let's say this is the state of your relationship. It broke down to here. And it's almost like you were expecting this to go to a mechanic in some way and go like, okay, can you restore it to like it was when it was brand new, please? Right. But I think what you found was like, no. I'm not going to just let you go brand new. I'm going to teach you how to make this surpass that. Right. Better than brand new. And I think that was what's surprising for you. Is like reconciliation is not even the highest goal anymore. It's creating this anti-fragile relationship that literally heals itself and goes further up the more stress you put it through, which is, like during my wedding, I was struggling to come up with like good vows because I was like, we've been together for 8 years. We've been living in this anti-fragile mindset for a while. I mean, like usually when people make vows and promises, they're like, I promise to always be with you through sickness and in health, whatever it is. I'm like, we're already doing beyond that. So like me saying that, it's actually a downgrade from what we've been doing already. So I don't really know what to say. I want to close this off too with like talking about your experience, more of your experience in the program. You said you tried therapy for a bit, and you said like therapy did a lot to guide you away from like the controlling behaviors that you were doing in the beginning, but not so much in terms of like personal development. Tell me more about your experience with therapy.
I mean, a lot of it was just geared toward like, why are these things upsetting you? Like what? I mean, I tried to talk to my therapist about, the relationship issues, but she wasn't like what is the word? A relationship
counselor.
There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. She wasn't a marriage counselor. So it was just like individual therapy for me. And, it started out just kind of talking about a lot of my childhood experiences, things that could have influenced the way I think now. And if I tried to talk to her about my relationship, it was like, well, you just have to let her decide what she wants. Like you can't just control that. It was just very clear, like that's not what you do.
Which is good feedback, but it's very vague. Like what does that mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And then the rest of it was just like, make a list of 10 things you can do for yourself. It's just like, walk my dog, water my garden, just like do some yard work. And it was like, this stuff, like if I just focus on this wholly, and do this for a year, maybe I'll be less depressed. But I don't know. It was slow going and it didn't really like have an avenue for self-growth. It was just, maybe you'll become okay with this. So that was kind of what therapy felt like.
I see what you mean. It's like the way I see it is also like I always say, like it's working on the things that are necessary but not sufficient. Really, it's like, okay, like you're telling me I should work out, I should like look better, I should be more happy with myself, I should walk my dogs more, I should take walks more, I should exercise more. It's like, okay, great, like all these things are great, right? But what does this have to do with the relationship right now? Like, this is my real problem right now, is the relationship right now. Like, and I think what we try to do in the program, and to toot my own horn a bit, right, is like we try to really get to the root of why the relationship broke down in the first place. The key mindsets, like the reason why your relationship broke down is because of the victim mindset, because of your tetheredness, because of your FAE bias, because of your hypothetic thinking, because of your mistaken understanding of what it means to have power in a relationship, of what self-esteem means, of what interdependence means, all these things, and changing all of those, because you cannot use the same problems to solve your problem right now. So you need to change those problems. And once you change those problems, you realize, ooh, I can come up with a lot of avenues to actually start conversations, to actually plant some seeds here, to actually show my changes, to actually change myself. Was that kind of what you found in the program? Which is why you said, like, I didn't really doubt the program, really.
Yeah. I mean, it was, a lot of it was, concepts I had a very, really like vague understanding of, or heard of them before. But just to have it really spelled out very clearly in multiple different ways, to where like, okay, like this is definitely like what this means. And it went so much deeper than what I expected. I remember one of the big aha moments was talking about reversing what is it? Like the big flywheel, and how it just takes consistent pressure in the opposite direction, and eventually it'll slow down and turn the other way. And like, it's possible because you already watched it happen in a negative direction.
Yeah.
And just like things like that. But really, I don't know. It helped me like understand my situation. And
what do you do
like
for work, by the way? I'm curious. What do you do for work?
I'm a software developer.
Yeah. See, like, I feel like my brain works in a very like technical way. So whenever I use like these technical examples of like technical things in life, people who are technical will go like, oh yeah, totally, I get it. But it's like the hardest part about teaching relationships is like, how do you take something so soft and so abstract and make it into something more concrete and more scientific and more tangible, I guess. So I'm glad that one resonated, because that was hard to do. You also mentioned like there was also a lot of like troubles in navigating advice from other people. What was your experience here from like advice from friends, maybe family, stuff like that?
It was just a lot of like, if she's not willing to like work on it with you, then like find someone else. And a friend that was like, yeah, if that were me, I would just be like, peace. If you don't want to do this with me, then like I'll just go do me. Just a lot of things like that, where I had to be like, no, that's not what I'm doing. That's not my goal here.
Yeah.
And to some extent, where I could have gotten like fights with some family members. It was, I mean, this was early on, before like I had frameworks. It was just like, I can't really make you understand this, but sitting here and talking to you and having you tell me all these things counter to what I'm trying to do is not helping me.
Yeah.
So like, there was a few people I cut out for, like a month or two, until I was like able to go talk to them and like, I get why you would say that, but like, that's not what this is.
It almost reminds me of like when I was trying to start my business too. There was two kinds of advice, right? So I was like having a hard time with the business, and what kind of advice tells me to succeed despite, to push through. The other advice tells me just don't do it. Just don't put yourself through it, right? So it's kind of reminds me of the same thing, because they both will disguise it themselves as help, but only one really helps. The other one is not really helping. And it goes back to the quote of like, don't wish life was easier, wish you were tougher, kind of thing. And so, yeah, it's easy for you to say, just find someone new, but it doesn't change the fact that like you might have contributed really badly to that relationship, and there is some flaws within yourself that you need to fix. And like they say, like you can ignore reality, but you cannot ignore the consequences of ignoring reality, right? So if you take the easy way out to say like, you probably have some issues, but it's too hard to like work on them right now. So just like pretend the issues don't exist, it's the other person's fault, and just go on with your life, you know? It makes you feel great, but it
For a
makes you
minute.
feel for a minute. Then you start your new relationship, and then you start the same cycle again, and you realize you wasted 10 years of your life not working on the same thing. It's very depressing at that point. Um, so it's just something for people to think about, right? It's like, yes, this journey is a tougher road, but it's a road that goes up from here, right? Well, your road is like you get this instant gratification, and then it just goes downhill from there. And your life is very long, and it has a lot of down to go. And if you choose the other way, a lot of up to go. So which one do you want, kind of thing?
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's all I wanted. That's all on my list to discuss here. Unless you have some more things you want to get off your chest and say about the program, about your journey, whatever it is that you want people to know.
I mean, I think we've covered it all. One of the bigger ones that, I mean, it was interesting. You talked about how, when you do reconcile, like the work's not going to be over, it just begins. And experiencing that firsthand was different from just hearing it. That one was kind of interesting. It was like, I think it was like the first kind of argument after reconciliation, once things had kind of settled down a little bit. And it was like, oh shit, like, yeah, this is like, there's no coasting, it's like, you do it.
You do it. You better love doing it. You better love the process of like facing problems and so on. Because like, again, we go back to the main theme of this call, right? Of this interview, which is you cannot solve your problems with the same thinking you used to create it. So if you were to reconcile and you realize like you hate the process of dealing with issues, dealing with feelings, dealing with difficult feelings, etc., you're not ready to reconcile. You don't know what reconciliation means. You don't know what a relationship means, because like your allergy to this, like to dealing with your partner's difficult feelings, for example, difficult thoughts, sometimes irrational thoughts, is probably why your relationship broke down in the first place, right? So the only way you can maintain an anti-fragile relationship is if you take those difficult truths and go, I like that. This is part of it. It's like playing a video game and going like imagine if you played a video game and you're like, I wish this video game had less challenges. What the fuck? Like, you don't even know what playing a video game means then, right? Yeah. Anyway, I thought that was a funny analogy when I first thought about it. Oh yeah, how much impact did the community create for you? Like seeing other people and going in the same journey, in the same path as you, seeing people in different parts of that journey. Like, how valuable was the community and why? Yeah. Tell me more about that.
Just knowing that there is this massive group of people that are all experiencing similar things, learning the same stuff, and everybody's supporting each other. I don't know. It was great. It was nice to just have that community of people that I had that much in common with, and most people in that group are perfectly like happy to just kind of sit down and have a conversation with you, discuss things they're learning. I still communicate with a lot of them regularly. I've made a lot of friends through this, and that was a very unexpected byproduct of joining the program. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of caring people with a lot of wisdom there that I don't think I could have gotten to where I am, especially not in the same time frame without that group.
It's interesting you say that, because like I was marveling about like, because I only have like 50,000 subscribers, I think. And to be able to like attract this many people who are this obsessed about this program, about like this way of life, is just touches me every day. It's like, my God, like we've built something here. We have something here. Yeah. Anyway, I won't take too much more of your time, but guys, if you want to kind of experience what Sean experienced here and kind of learn these skills to really the internal shifts to really get yourself out of this feeling of resentment you might be feeling when you're feeling in a one-sided relationship, or when you're finding yourself in this very hopeless situation and you're trying to turn things around. Like it all starts with the internal shift. And only when you learn the internal shift do you actually understand how to learn the frameworks and find creative ways to be able to get into a conversation and drive the conversation, dance in the conversation, etc. It's all driven. The foundation is always the internal shift. So if you wanted to learn more of this internal shift and really get the results that Sean got here, you can join me in my masterclass. It's about an hour and a half long, this masterclass. At the end of the masterclass, I'll show you how to apply for the program if you're interested in applying. We are currently only able to take in 1 in 10 applicants who apply. So just treat this like you would when you're applying for like a respectable university, whatever it is. Don't half-ass the survey, for example. Put on your best behavior, right? Because we do have to be very selective, not by choice, but by the function of getting so many applicants. But yeah, Sean, thank you so much for an hour and a half of your time.
Thank you.
I know like you're not in the program as much now anymore. But yeah, would love to see you there occasionally.
Yeah, I'll come make a post. I kind of miss everyone.
All right, brother.
Thank you so much.
Actually, before you go, I want to record the intro a bit better. So I'm just gonna record the intro, pretend like we're in the beginning of the interview again, and I'll just cut it whenever we're done. Okay. Hey guys, today I have Sean with me. Sean joined the program, let's see, June 9th, 2022. And I think what you'll find here will resonate with a lot of you because one, I think a lot of you are facing the situation where you find yourself in this very one-sided relationship, or maybe you feel like your case is really too far gone. Like your partner has really made up their mind. They're not changing their mind anytime soon. And so we're going to show you how Sean kind of went through all those stages, went through the notion of like, how did he even break into the conversation in the first place? How he planted the right seeds to really grow that relationship, grow his partner's ability to trust him again. And eventually to the point where your partner really decided on her own to just say like, I want to move back in. I want to be here. And what happens basically after reconciliation too, which is interesting. So yeah, all that coming up. That's it.
Cool.
All right, Sean. Have a good night, okay?
Take care.
Bye. Thank you.